Hello, everyone. We're going to begin the webinar. Welcome to our first webinar for the Metro Boston Climate Preparedness Task Force. We typically host these types of events at MAPC, but want to make participation easier for folks, so we're testing out this type of virtual brown bag, and would love feedback from you later to see if this platform is more suitable for you, or if you'd like to revert back to in-person sessions, or maybe do a mix of both. Today's webinar is focused on municipal-led climate education programs with lessons from the Climate Ready Boston Leaders Program. And I'll refer to that program as the CRB Leaders Program. So the CRB Leaders Program is a model for other municipalities that have local climate vulnerability assessments and are looking to enhance resident engagement on climate preparedness. The webinar will equip you with the tools needed to launch and run similar programs in your communities. Today, we're going to be learning more about the Boston program from Maya Mansfield, the Climate Ready Boston Program Manager, and Mugsy Undamir, the Greenovate Boston Project Coordinator. I'm going to. One sec as I'm trying to change the slides. It's, okay, taking a second. So here's the agenda. Following my remarks, we'll have Maya Mansfield discuss why Boston created the CRB Leaders Program, how it's part of implementation of Climate Ready Boston, and the process for developing the program. Then Mugsy Undamir will go over the structure of the Climate Ready Boston Leaders Program, the format of trainings, next activities and steps for the program, and will offer advice to other municipalities that are interested in running similar workshops. The last 20 minutes of the webinar will be open for Q&A, so feel free to submit questions via the chat box throughout the webinar. Please direct it not just to the host, but to the panelists. And my colleague Josh is going to help us relay those questions to our panelists. I'm now going to transfer over the webinar controls to Maya and Mugsy, so bear with me for 1 second while I make that transition. Maya and Mugsy, are you there? Want to make sure you're not. Okay, perfect.
You can hear us?
Yep.
Awesome. Should we go?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you everyone for listening in. I'm Maya, the Climate Ready Boston Program Manager out of the Boston Environment Department, and I'm here with my colleague Mugsy, who is the Greenovate Program Coordinator and who's running the Leaders Program this year. I'm just going to go into a quick overview of why we developed this program and what were our goals with it. And then Mugsy is going to run through sort of how it all works, what content we're sharing, what we're trying to get people to do. So start at the top with why CRB Leaders. So the idea came from some of our partner organizations that we work with who felt that once the report came out, it was really big, it was really technical, they were worried no one was going to read it, and they were worried that people who go out and talk about climate resiliency or Climate Ready Boston, that they weren't sort of talking from the same talking points. Like we weren't sure that people were getting the same takeaways from the report, that the people were explaining the data and the findings and the challenges in a consistent way, and we wanted to make sure that the findings from this report were synthesized in a set of resources for people who could go out and start to lead conversations around climate readiness, speak from a common set of talking points essentially, and then go out and be able to reach broader and more diverse communities within the city of Boston than we could as a limited city staff. So those are really our main goals that I laid out here on the slide. How do we get this 400-page report distilled into a more easy to understand and more relatable set of challenges and opportunities? How do we get this content into new communities in Boston where the city couldn't reach itself, and that maybe the city wasn't the best ambassador to reach in the first place? And then how do we empower these people who are going to lead the conversations to help us better connect resiliency with other priorities that communities are facing today, that they're working to address today, so that climate resiliency could be more relevant to them in what they're already working on, rather than being thought of as something that was very far off in the future, very intangible long term. We worked with a few key partners on the project. We are Greenovate and City of Boston. We worked closely with the Boston Green Ribbon Commission, who is interested in how this content gets brought to different business and professional communities that are part of their network. And then we contracted with a consultant named Climate Access. They're really great. Highly recommend that you go on their website and check out all of the resources that they develop. They're really experts in how to best communicate climate change to diverse and sort of broadly representative communities. How do we make climate change information more relevant and more accessible to more people? So this is what we worked on together with Climate Access and the Green Ribbon Commission. And Climate Access, through their process, brought in many community stakeholders to advise on how the resources and how the program really came together. But this is what Climate Access produced for us. It was this toolkit, which is essentially a presentation. This is the distilling of the Climate Ready Boston report into a set of slides. There's a backgrounder, which gives some information about, overall, if you were to read this report, what would you find in it? It's about a page or two. There's a dialogue support document, which is essentially talking points for every single slide. What are the most important things to say, and what is a little bit more background on that information. There are then neighborhood-specific resources for each neighborhood that was a focus area of the Climate Ready Boston report. And then we have a tip sheet for if you want to get involved in what the city's doing with Climate Ready Boston or with climate action in general, these are places where you can start. Something that was really important about the development of these resources with Climate Access, and something that they really brought strongly to this conversation and that they really pushed us to internalize, is this framing of climate change. We needed to immediately move away from any major doom and gloom, major analysis paralysis, all of that, and instead focus on, what is the opportunity here? What is the vision for a Climate Ready Boston? What is this future that we are preparing for that is better, that people will be galvanized around to support? Once we have that opportunity and that value case clearly laid out, then we can move on to the challenge. What are the risks that we're facing? What are really the challenges that are rising to the top, and that this report is really helping to surface? And then choice. What do we do? What is our choice? What are the types of actions that we can take? What is the city considering? Where do we need help from partners across the community? So this is really the framing that all of our content was based around, and that we are really trying to continue internalizing in how we discuss all of our climate action work. And then the program itself. So this is something that Muggsy is going to go into a bit more detail on, but basically the structure of it and that Climate Access developed for us as a result of a number of focus groups and lots of interviews with different stakeholders who would potentially take part, is that it starts with a training. And we walk through the content of the presentation. We make sure people feel comfortable and up to speed with the information. We then offer small stipends or scholarships to participants. We've been averaging around $200 for people who need them for their time to come to the training and then to lead a presentation or an event or a conversation that reaches at least 30 people in their network. So that is the challenge or the ask that we are posing to participants. If you want to participate in the Leaders Program, here is a small scholarship find a way to have this content reach at least 30 people in your network. And then the network is really the big part of it. How are we growing the network of people who are involved in these conversations and are hosting their own conversations? And how do we keep that network alive so that we are plugging them into other opportunities to get involved in resiliency work or carbon mitigation work or zero waste planning or other efforts across the city where climate action voices are so important. So we piloted the Leaders Program last summer with a few trainings. This is a picture from one of our trainings that we held here in City Hall. This is the website at the bottom, boston.gov/climate-ready-leaders, where you can get all of the content that we've developed, all the program information. Everything is online. You don't technically need to go through the program to do anything. The program is just that next step if you want, sort of more support, more of a connection with Greenovate in the city, but technically everything's just online and you can run with it. And last summer, we trained about 70 leaders who about half of them ended up following through with leading various events or conversations around the city of Boston. This is a map that we developed to visualize where those conversations were held and that they reached over 1,600 residents that we tracked through the leaders themselves and through surveys that we gave to all the participants. So this really demonstrated the potential of the program to reach across the city and basically every neighborhood of the city in all sorts of different creative ways to share this information. Some people did presentations, some people tabled at events, some people were more creative and laminated some of the slides and put them at their business. There was someone who owned a juice company who had the slides laminated, and anyone who looked through them and then filled out the survey got a punch card, so a punch in their cards. So people did all sorts of different creative approaches to get this information into the hands of their network as they defined it. Now I'm going to turn it over to Muggsy, who really took the reins over the program after the summer, internalized all the various lessons learned, and helped us to launch the second half of our pilot this year into the spring, and is helping us to build recommendations for a sustainable program that will continue from here on out, we hope.
Hi everyone, I'm Muggsy. So I'm kind of just going to go over the structure of the program, how it runs currently, and how we've changed it from the first cohort to the second cohort of leaders, and kind of just getting into the process of becoming a leader and the conversations we hope that they're having. So this year we had our second cohort training start in January, and there were 3 different trainings. We made them accessible, or hopefully very accessible, to different types of people coming from different parts of the city. So we made sure to geographically locate them in different locations, but also to schedule them on the weekend, after work time, and also a lunchtime event so different people could attend. After that training, we maintained contact with everybody, communications. And in February, everyone is supposed to submit their event and budget proposals and then receive approval from us and receive their scholarships to use towards their events. Starting in March through May, people will start hosting their events throughout the city. Anyone has access to the public events. Some of the events are private, kept with their local networks or with their different, I guess, whoever they want to present to. Others are open to the public. We have actually one this weekend. Someone's hosting a plastic-free potluck and is talking about these materials there. So that calendar is available to anybody who visits our website. And then finally, in June, we have a celebration and closing event that celebrates the work of the leaders and brings both the first and second cohort together to kind of just have them speaking with each other and meeting each other, and again, building and growing that network. So the training format as it stands is so when they come into the training, we go over the participation overview. So we really talk about, what is the expectations of each leader, what we hope for you to do, the information that you can share, and then also go over deadlines, forms, and surveys. We do give out surveys for the presenter to fill out and for participants to fill out, because this information comes back to us, helps us further develop the program, but also gives us insight to see what each neighborhood or what organizations or what businesses are saying and thinking about Climate Ready Boston and the Climate Action Plan. So it helps brings that information to us and connects us better with those neighborhoods and those constituents. And then we move into the impacts and science presentation, and we're going to actually walk through this today, or just go over it fairly briefly. And what that is it's the presentation that was created in order to distill the 400-page plan. So we'll go over that really quick just to give you an idea of what that looks like. But we walk through that at the training so that the leaders feel comfortable delivering that information, and they're able to change it and include information that is more specific to their neighborhood or more specific to the concerns of the people that they're presenting to. So they have the ability to change that in whichever capacity they'd like. And then finally, we go over everything that goes into hosting your event. So who you're going to be presenting to, the type of event you want to host, and also developing a plan or a call to action that we're hoping that everybody takes following the presentation. So, you know, initially the first cohort was where we trained everyone, they delivered the presentation or hosted an event, and then we got the surveys and it came back to us, and we've been looking for ways to kind of create more actionable items. So a lot of what this second cohort is doing is bringing those actionable items to their presentations and hoping to get people to take whatever action they might take as a group or as an individual. But we're going to talk a little bit further on that in a second. So I'm going to turn it over to Maya really fast, and she's just going to go over the presentation that the leaders actually present, and then we'll jump right back into just kind of a little bit more into the training. Yeah.
All right, so this is the presentation. Rather than walking you through the content, which I think many people may be familiar with, I'll just sort of overview what is it that we are showing. So we start out, and please note, this text is text that Muggsy filled in herself as if she was giving the presentation, but we leave this as a blank slate for people to fill in. So first, we want people to be very clear about why are they here, why are they giving this presentation, and why this is important to them. So these are Muggsy's answers to that question. This is the agenda. We start with the vision, then we go to the challenges, and then we go to the choice. So this is the vision or the opportunity. What does a Climate Ready Boston look like? We're trying to show a few different examples of the types of things that we're talking about so that the vision for a future, better, prepared, resilient, adapted city is a bit more clear. So we have some images from our East Boston report for a long-term vision for the East Boston waterfront. We talk about some smaller neighborhood scale projects, that it doesn't have to be so grand, it can be very site specific. Resiliency means a lot of different things. Why are we here? What is the challenge? Is that climate change is here, people are already experiencing it in different ways. These are the types of impacts that we are focused on. We highlight social vulnerability and how this is an important part of the report, that people aren't affected equally and that there are different populations across the city that would feel climate impacts first and worst. And then we go into the impacts themselves. So here we're looking at more hot days, which translates into the heat island effect across the city, increased precipitation, which means stormwater flooding, and sea level rise, which means flooding along coasts and rivers. We look at the exposure across a number of people or buildings or property value for longer-term sea level rise scenarios. And then we pretty quickly get into taking action. What is the different layers of action that the city is looking at and working to advance? We talk about how there's not just one solution, that because resiliency touches so many aspects of the city, the whole city, that there's actions that we need to take across many different fronts and that are mutually reinforcing and that are all important to advance. And then we go through each of these categories and we talk through a specific project and a specific way to engage, looking at the Map Explorer and using the climate projections, looking at protected shorelines and the different neighborhood coastal resiliency plans that are going on, resilient infrastructure and efforts around infrastructure coordination and smart utilities, and adapted buildings, zoning, the climate change checklist, and resources that we're working to develop for property owners. And last, but certainly not least, prepared and connected communities, the role of this program, the LEADERS program, in helping to get this content out into the Boston community in more creative and actionable ways. And some ideas for how to get involved, and then we also talk through the tip sheet that I mentioned earlier. And the conversation really ends on this question. So what does this mean for you? What are the challenges that climate change presents for you or for the work that you're doing? And then what can you as a larger community do to address these challenges? So this is really the place that we want the conversations to end, really trying to think about what it means for you, and then how do we turn this into action that this group can consider, whether it's a neighborhood group, whether it's a professional group, how can they start taking action within their own world to advance this work forward? Mugsy?
Yep, so back here. So I guess now that we've kind of gone over the presentation that they delivered, these next few slides are more of the structure of the training and the structure of the program and how we think it can apply to different municipalities or can apply to different, people can adapt this in their own way. So what we emphasize throughout the training in its preparation, so when they're there, the slide that asks, or that says, that first one with the three circles, it says, why am I here today? That's one of the things that we actually take the time to have people at the training fill out and think about why they're wanting to talk about this information and why this presentation is important to them, why is climate change important to them, why do they want to share this information. So that's something that we spend a lot of time on and give, usually a lot, have group discussion about why they're there today. Another thing is, who will I share this information with? So we conduct a network mapping exercise, which I'll go over in the next few slides, which really just helps residents, businesses, and organizations think about where they have power in the, and who they talk with, who they speak with, who they engage with regularly. So by mapping out your network, you're almost developing a way to, just frame, thinking about who you can share this information with and why. And then we go into what kind of event will work best. We usually give a few options for people to see, just to have a general idea of the types of events they can host. So sometimes it's a lunch and learn, other times it can be, a quick presentation at the office, or what's been happening a lot lately is people are actually hosting parties at their house and getting a lot of people who might not necessarily engage with this information regularly to come together in a space. Following the preparation of preparing for your event, we address the discussion portion. So this last slide that Maya just spoke about is something that we really want them to emphasize throughout their training. So this is filled in for just one type of community, but they get to fill it in based on the audience that they're presenting to. So the first circle represents the challenges. So what kind of challenges does your community, your organization, or your neighborhood face? This can be related to climate change. This can be indirectly related to climate change. And in a sense, we're just trying to get an idea of the things that these specific organizations or peoples are most focused on. And then the second circle is the call to action. So what can you do now? What is in our power to address, and what kind of actions can we take? So the next few slides are just going to go over these 5 steps and kind of give you more of an idea of the way we run it in the training. So why am I here today? So I filled these out for our training, and we ask that each leader, before they deliver their presentation, fill this out. And we ask them to make it super personal and really think about, how does this apply to the people they're presenting to? Why are you here? I think the more personal you make it, the more real it is. And so that's what we try and emphasize to our to the people who come to the training. The second is, that's me and my cat, in case anyone was wondering. The second thing we emphasize is who are you going to share this information? So we do this network mapping exercise. So I showed this to them, to each of the people we trained, to make sure they kind of got an idea of what that meant. And so I put in a few different places, people, you know, my network of, or my group of people that I engage with regularly, and then said that these are the groups, or these are the types of people that I feel like I can have these conversations with and where it will be meaningful. So I chose, then we choose one of these groups to then present to. So I chose my former coworkers at Barrington Coffee because I thought that they would be a great group of people to have this conversation with, since they don't readily engage with climate change on a regular basis. So then when you go into the discussion and you think about what are the challenges that climate change has on our work as, and that they can change into anything. So in my case, I changed it to what are our challenges as baristas. And then we also went through this exercise of the training so that people could choose their audience and then think about the challenges that they face. So these are some of the ones that I outlined that I think as a barista at the time are things that climate change, or the effects that climate change has on either that profession or that industry. And so just a few of the examples, and I'll just quickly walk through them, is the hourly wages, and that if you can't get to work, then you're not going to be able to make any money. So if the roads are blocked because of snow or flooding, then how are you going to get to the place you need to be? Another is thinking about waste as a coffee shop, and so on and so forth. And the point of this is to show that there are multiple scales of problems. It's not just, you know, it could be that the challenge could be personal, and it could be like a systemic challenge. And so how do you think about these on different scales? And then we go into the opportunities. So how do we, as this identity, address these challenges? And so choosing one of those things, we break it down. So I chose that we create a lot of waste as an industry. We outline the different ways we can address that challenge. And this is also multi-scalar. It goes from us being, you know, people who work at a coffee shop to the entire row of retail that exists along our street and coming together as a group. By emphasizing this, you're taking it away from focusing on the individual action and looking at more of a group action or more of a community action, which I think, if anything, creates less of a burden on the self and more of a collective form of action and an opportunity as a group. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we try and emphasize throughout the trainings as well. And just to get a little into the differences between cohort 1 and cohort 2, this time we had 67 people participate in the training. 57% of them were from Boston, 43% were from the surrounding area. And these were the just a few of the different organizations and affiliations that people came from. And then this is kind of a breakdown just graphically, just to see where everyone came from. But you'll see that there's 28% of people who are just coming as concerned citizens. And one of the things that we've learned, and one of the things that we emphasize now, is that these trainings need to be adaptive. So while the pilot was everybody come to our training, and you know, we didn't necessarily say oh, just businesses or just organizations, or like kind of organizing people in that way. But what's important to note is that people learn differently and people engage with this information differently. So the trainings should also adapt and reflect that sort of the people that you're presenting to and the people you're having these conversations with. And so that's generally the picture of the training. So going through just a recap, the training consists of them understanding what participation looks like, the materials that we hope that they share with whoever they share it with, and then the ways in which to think about who you're going to communicate with and the types of actions that could be taken as a group. And it's really meant to just, you know, create conversation and then hopefully inspire people to take action. And then we work with the people to help them keep going and keep taking the actions that they want to take, and connecting them with the right resources and or connecting them to each other, because they all have a ton of resources too. You know, a lot of people are coming from different fields and want to work together to push forth some of these things. So that's the general understanding of the training. Our next steps as a group is to really expand the content and to focus on the intersections that exist between climate and social resiliency and equity and public health. And so we're working to find where the linkages are and to implement some of those things into our trainings, but also into the slides. So providing more information in the form of a couple of slides here or there that might connect. We're also linking in Carbon-Free Boston and focusing on also mitigation aspects of it, and Zero Waste Boston as well. So really kind of combining all of our different programs together to get a full picture of the things that the city is doing and the things that people can participate in. Another thing that we're hoping to continue to adapt and change is to tier our asks for the leaders. So where one leader might just want to attend a training and give a presentation, and that might be all they want to do, that's perfectly fine. You know, we're aware of people's time and what their obligations are. But then there's another tier where if they go through the training, they give a presentation, and then they want to do something. They want to create something, they want to make something, they want to form some sort of group of people who work on a specific project. That's another type of ask that we have. So we're trying to kind of develop more of a actionable messaging and move away from just education is great and it's really important, but we also want to see people participating in city process as well. And so while doing that, we're trying to transition this into a sustainable program. Right now, we are still in the pilot phase. It is the second cohort is still considered in the pilot phase. But after that, we're hoping to implement this as a move out of the pilot and make it a permanent and adaptable program within the city. So that's kind of what our next steps are. And as far as lessons learned, one of the biggest things is that you have to have someone dedicated to communications with people and to running this program. I am that person, and I've found that the more conversations I have with the leaders and throughout this process, the more deep our relationships are, and the more trust is built between city and resident or city and organization, especially because we're all very concerned and excited about the same things. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we've learned. And again, I think I mentioned this before, but the training changes based on the audience. You know, sometimes it is more about educating people on the effects of climate change, because sometimes people don't know what that is and what that looks like in Boston. And then at other times, people do have that information and want you to focus more on how they can bring this to their networks and how they can participate in the process. So it's really about gauging who's present, what they want to hear from you, and giving them the information they want, because again, we're taking people's time and we're asking for them to come to us, so we want to make sure we're giving them what they need as well. But that's all I've got. But we're I guess I don't know what's next, but
yeah, we're happy to take any questions.
Yep.
Thank you, Maya and Mugsy. That was a really great presentation. And it's an exciting program, and if I'm correct, I believe it's one of the few programs like this from a municipal government in the country, right? So I think there's a lot to learn from the leadership you guys are taking on this front. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. One is, so it seems that each stipend for an event is $200. Where is the city finding that resource, that funding, and how are you going to sustain it in years to come as other communities are thinking about, you know, how to maybe shape a stipend program that's similar?
That's a great question. So for the summer pilot, we applied for a state grant through EEA. It was I'm not sure actually what the exact name of it was, but it was sort of a community engagement-oriented grant, and we used those funds to work with Climate Access to develop the program and to also allocate a portion of that to the stipends and scholarships. In the second cohort, we received grant funding from the Green Ribbon Commission because they were interested in sort of our continuing to expand and build the program and continuing to develop new content to revise the content based on our lessons learned, and also to develop new content that was also focused on carbon mitigation and zero waste planning. So that grant came from the Green Ribbon Commission. And moving forward, we're looking at a few different avenues, pulling from some existing grant funding for Climate Ready Boston, putting in a portion of the program costs into just our operating budget if this is something that we feel is, important for us to continue as a department and to expand to touch sort of all of our work areas. So there's a few different directions, but actually having the scholarships come through the Green Ribbon Commission this round was a much sort of more streamlined way for us to more easily distribute those funds out to participants.
That's great. That's very helpful. I'll remind folks you can continue to send questions through the chat box. Another one for you and Mugsy is, what follow-up actions have you seen occur from leaders or those who are trained by the leaders? Are they beginning to self-organize around climate, or is it still very early stages where they're just learning and understanding what's available and the vulnerabilities?
So as far as the first cohort goes, we have been seeing a lot of coming together amongst them. So I just spoke with a few people last night at our open house, and they're like coming together to have larger discussions, especially because they're located in the Seaport. Their businesses and organizations are located in the Seaport. So they're coming together to have larger conversations and bring more of these materials out to the people that they serve regularly. So they are continuing conversations, and they're sending that information to me. So a lot are still in the form of presentations, but they're adapting them to best serve whoever they're presenting to. So if it's a restaurant or if it's a property manager or whatnot, they're changing the information a little bit to really provide these people with the information that they need. But also, we're seeing a lot more community action, which I think is pretty interesting and really great there. So right now it is still, I feel like there's less, there hasn't been a ton of like physical action or like projects or I guess being made, but there has been a lot of conversations continued and looking at ways to collaborate with each other. So, people who like our professors at universities are bringing this to their students in different ways, and even thinking about it in a visual way, like how do we present or how do we convert some of these materials to posters or content to bring out into the city and just display this information. But, we leave it really open to the people who are participating. But I think we're going to be seeing a lot more actionable, things coming out of it, especially around, I think the one leader actually spoke with me recently and told me that they are working to convert some vacant land into a community garden. They're actually getting funding for that project themselves. We're not giving them funding for that project, but they're finding people to support that. So I think everyone's pretty excited and excited that we're here to help support them and even answer questions or connect them with the right people, especially if they're focused on something that we might not have, we might not focus on particularly. We connect them to the right people. So there's definitely going to be some new stuff coming out, I'd like to say, over the next year. But yeah, I think the first cohort is now working with the second cohort to develop more tangible projects. So hopefully you'll see them in a neighborhood near you.
That's great. And then another question, so how might another municipality that wants to offer similar trainings but maybe doesn't have the funding for a staff person like yourself, Muggsy, but could maybe send out some stipends for the programming, how might they think about ways to respond to questions or follow-up that's necessary? It seems like you're getting a lot of follow-up requests from participants, which is great, but I imagine some communities just don't have the resources to hire a full-time person within their community. So do you guys have any suggestions of who could help oversee something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that this tries to do is really leverage the existing relationships that that occur in, like, whether it be a nonprofit who has a strong relationship with a specific community, or like, it's almost like the follow-up doesn't necessarily have to be focused. Like, I don't necessarily have to be doing all of the follow-up, where if there's a nonprofit or an organization or a specific business or whatever that already does a lot of this work, they can be almost like how do I put it? Like, they could be the point person for questions for that specific thing, which, someone in a different municipality or whatever can respond to if there's a question that other person can't respond to. I feel like it's almost like you don't have to have, like, I love doing what I do, but I also feel like we can also have people located in specific neighborhoods or specific organizations that are already the go-to for these questions, and maybe they channel or can filter those questions or that follow-up so that it's not a ton of response or overwhelming, if anything.
Mm-hmm. And really the baseline point is the presentation and the materials. And so if you already have venues where you're engaging people, whether it's like a climate action plan or just ongoing work or any sort of advisory group, I mean, the main ask is just, here is the content that we want you to speak to. And then we are not being prescriptive about how or where you do that. So that's sort of the bottom line thing. If there's existing networks or avenues or groups where you could already take the content and give it to them and sort of let them run with it, that's sort of the foundation. Hosting a training is maybe the next step of when you take that time for people to really walk through it and ask questions and share ideas for what they're going to do next. And then the stipends is sort of an added plus. We didn't have, not everyone requested a stipend. Not everyone felt that they needed it or that they, that they needed it to bring this information to to their group. So that, I don't think that's an essential part of it. It's just sort of an attempt to reach people in communities that do need the financial support to take the time to do this. But really sort of the underlying thing is, here is the content, here is a framing for how to talk about this, here is what we're working on, here are the risks, and we want to empower you to take this and translate it into sort of what makes sense for your organization or group and what you're working on.
Great. Another question, how were the original 70 leaders notified of this program, and did you all do individual recruitment for certain leaders, or was it really folks came across the solicitation and then reached out?
Yeah, I think we pretty much just promoted it through our existing Greenovate networks. I think there's about 7,000+ people sort of on the Greenovate network. That was by far the bulk, but we also tried to send out through other sort of networks that the city has, whether it was the Imagine Boston listserv or through our neighborhood liaisons or through our public health commissions. So we basically just promoted it through various city networks. This time we were going to try to do a more targeted approach to really identify what are the networks or the groups that we don't feel that we have as much access to currently, and how do we prioritize outreach into those groups, or how do we identify maybe it was a leader who came from the public health community last time, and we wanted to work with them specifically to say, can you get 5 people to the next training, and really target, specific groups that we wanted to make sure were represented. We tried to do a bit of that, but honestly, we got so much interest from just sort of our broad outreach that it was our own capacity issues to take on more people that we would then need to, walk through the program and follow up with. So it was really our own capacity, which was the bottleneck. Otherwise, we would have taken on many more and, targeted more specific networks and groups. But we really did get a lot of, our trainings essentially filled up like within 2 days. So that was 3 trainings, capped at about 40 or so people each.
That's really great. Have you all talked to abutting municipalities or others in the region to find collaboration opportunities? Because there was, I think, that pie chart showing that 55% or so of the attendees for the Leaders program were Boston residents, and then the other percentage fell outside of the city. It seems like there's an appetite from even those community members outside of the city of Boston. So I'm wondering if there's a way to even connect those particular folks to their municipal government to help maybe lead an effort like this there.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, and something, another avenue of this that that is, is worth pursuing. Yeah, we did get a ton of people that were from outside of Boston, and so yeah, one sort of answer to that was we were trying to push them to figure out how they can connect within their own municipalities as well.
Well, we had a lot of folks from Cambridge and Somerville, and some even from some suburbs of, I don't remember. Someone came from, I think the first cohort we had someone from Westminster. I can't remember the town. But I guess so. We do get a lot of interest from other municipalities or people from other municipalities, and I'm, one of the things that I keep saying and emphasizing is that the content is all relatable, especially if you're in the Northeast. So it can be translated in any way that you want. Maybe you don't use a map of Boston, but you use the same, understanding and relationships, and then apply it to your neighborhood. As far as connecting with their city, like specifically like working hand in hand with other cities or towns, we haven't done that directly yet. I think we're hoping that the people who come to the trainings who are coming from other cities are trying to take a little bit of that in their own, in their hands as well. But I think that that's something that we've been having conversations about in the office. So I think, yeah, there's an opportunity there definitely for this to be able to be applicable and also be able to be shared. But everything is online, so by all means, download and or take it and convert it and change it and apply it to your neighborhood, your town, your city. That's like, we want people to do that. So.
Excellent, excellent. And it wasn't a critique really, but more so how can we create more of that cross-collaboration across boundaries. And yeah, I mean, it's still in the early phases of the program. So I think there's a lot of growth that's happening already and will continue. Another question that's dovetailing an earlier one is, are participants who are being trained by the trained leaders, are they being asked to see through a tangible next step or action? Is that part of the model, the program? Seems like they're being given information, but are they then committing to say, I'll do this one thing, whether it's emergency preparedness related or something infrastructure related in their neighborhood? Are you all doing that, like a pledge sort of thing?
So as of right now, it's kind of up to the leader and the people that they present to if there's like a specific project or thing that they want to take on, but we do provide the resource for them to do that. So we have a neighborhood toolkit that we have and people can print and bring to their presentations or events, and it outlines kind of in what ways they can continue to like stay involved and or take an action. And it has suggestions, but we don't currently have a like a pledging system or something like that, but that is something we've been talking about in like how do we get more people to participate in that sort of way. But I think the biggest thing is that, you know, we want people to do what they're most comfortable doing as well and what they feel like they can accomplish. And we don't want to like put too much of a, like now that you've come, you have to do something, but more of like now that you've come, here are options of things you can do. And most of the time the leader will actually work to coordinate that action if there is interest. But I mean, we've been having a lot of conversations about how it would be cool to display some of the actions that people have been taking or people will take so that other residents in the city can get involved if it's close to their geographic, like if they live in the same neighborhood and they want to participate as well. So we're working on developing that, but as of right now, there is no formal ask of people who attend the presentation by the people who are trained.
Got it, got it. And then what types of businesses have had the most participation in becoming leaders? And then have you found that they are typically training their employees, or is it their clients within their field? Could you just glean any insights on the private sector's engagement in this program?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of people we've had a bunch of people from like the design and engineering world. We've had people from property management and energy, and so that's like the most of the business sector that we've had involved and engaged. And I think so the trainings that I've seen or the presentations I've seen come out of this is sometimes, so I've went to one with designers who brought it to other designers and have said, you know, like this is something we need to be talking to our clients about and we really need to emphasize, you know, in our projects. So that was more of a personal thing. But then they're also, you know, like not just internally what they should be doing, but even how could they talk to other people in their field who might not be focusing on sustainability or resilience in their work. So sharing that with, like as a group of designers, how can they take that out into other design fields? So that's one way. Another is with property management and flood insurance and all of that. So like really delving into what it means as a person who manages a property to like what it means to be climate ready. So I don't have a specialty in that, so I don't even know what they talk about sometimes, but they like really focus in on how they can be best prepared and how they can adapt either their buildings or, you know, participate in planning processes to help them better educate themselves around the topic as well. So it just depends on the person. Sometimes they don't even take it back to their business. Sometimes they go and just present it to outside of their business. So it just really depends on the leader for sure. So, yeah.
That makes sense. I think those were all of our questions. I don't know if there were any parting words, Maya and Muggsy, you wanted to leave.
I mean, definitely check out the resources on the leaders website. The Climate Ready Boston Map Explorer is another sort of tool that we're trying to push out to get people to use. And we are here if you want to reach out to us sort of separately and learn more or figure out ways to collaborate as we continue to expand the program and figure out sort of how to up the ask for people, how to organize some of the actions that are coming out of it, how to expand content to other climate focus areas, how to reach different groups and sort of personalize it to different topic areas. These are all different things that are on our radar, and very interested in working with whoever might be interested as well.
Yeah, and also check out, look at the upcoming events by leaders. It's super interesting and super exciting to see the types of events they're coming up with and the conversations that they're having. So by all means, you are welcome to attend these events just to see, even get a glimpse of what people are talking about and how they're talking about it, to, even just think about it that way. But yep.
And those are posted on the Greenovate or Climate Ready Boston page?
They are linked on the Climate Ready Boston page, and they are posted on the Greenovate calendar as a standalone event as well.
Okay, great. So to everyone on the webinar, we will be sharing the recording of this for you all and for the task force members who couldn't make it, but we'll also provide links to these pages that Maya and Muggsy just mentioned, so that it's more easily accessible. And I want to give a big thanks to Maya and Muggsy for presenting on this program. I think it's really exciting, and there's a lot of growth potential across the Metro Mayor's region for this. And I hope to see all of you on the line at our next task force meeting. Just a reminder that it's the morning of March 22nd. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we will follow up by email soon.
Thank you.